Hey everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
It's great to be here.
Today we're tackling OSHA 1926.1052.
Yeah, all those regulations about stairways.
Specifically in construction.
Yep, exactly.
And we're going to be looking at some awesome material from Safety One Source.
They really lay it all out.
So if you're a safety pro,
or, just trying to up your safety game,
this is the deep dive for you.
We're going to find all those little details.
And you'll see just how important they are.
To make sure everybody's safe on those stairways.
Okay, so let's kick things off with 1926.1052A.
That's like the foundation.
Yeah, the general requirements.
For any stairway on a construction site.
It doesn't matter if it's permanent.
Or temporary.
They all have to meet these.
It all starts at those landings.
Yeah, landings are super important.
You gotta have enough space.
Enough space to maneuver.
Exactly.
So 1926.1152A lays it all out.
It tells us exactly how big those landings need to be.
At least 30 inches deep.
In the direction you're walking.
And the width.
That depends on how high the stairs are.
For every 12 feet of vertical climb.
You need at least 22 inches of width.
I mean, think about it.
You're coming down those stairs.
Maybe you're carrying tools or materials.
Yeah, you need some room to move.
A tiny landing.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Definitely.
All right, well, and it's not just about size.
The angle of those stairs matters too.
You know how steep they are?
OSHA's got a specific range for that.
30 to 50 degrees from horizontal.
Yeah. Why is that?
Well, a lot of reasons.
It's got to be about comfort, right?
Comfort for sure.
Make them easy to climb.
But it's more than that.
Oh, yeah.
If they're too steep.
Like basically a ladder.
Yeah, it's way too easy to fall.
And on the flip side,
if the stairs are too shallow,
they're going to take up a ton of space.
And then nobody wants to use them.
So that 20 to 50 degree range.
That sweet spot.
Yeah, where safety meets practicality.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's zoom in on the steps themselves.
Each individual step.
There's a rule about consistency there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, big time.
Every riser and every tread.
They have to be pretty much the same.
Throughout the whole set of stairs.
Can't have more than a 1/4 inch variation.
Wow, a 1/4 inch.
Seems pretty tiny.
But you know what?
Those little inconsistencies.
They can really mess with our balance.
Yeah, especially if someone's distracted.
Carrying something heavy.
Or working in low light.
That little 1/4 inch difference.
Can be all it takes to trip someone up.
Our brains just expect.
That rhythm of equal steps.
And when it's off.
It throws us off.
Yeah, and then bam.
Potential for a fall.
Exactly.
All right, speaking of things that can throw us off.
Let's talk about doors.
Doors opening right onto stairways.
Ugh, I've seen some scary setups.
Yeah, where you basically have to dodge the door.
To get down the stairs.
OSHA's got us covered.
Yeah, they thought of that one.
You absolutely need a platform there.
So even if the door swings open,
it can't block the stairway.
You always need at least 20 inches of clear space.
So you have that buffer zone.
No more door meets worker collisions.
Right, much safer.
Okay, now let's get into some construction-specific stuff.
All right. Thinking about those metal pan landings and treads.
You see there's a lot of construction sites.
Before the concrete's poured.
And the regulation is super clear about those.
You have to secure those pans.
Before anybody steps on them.
If they're loose.
Yeah, they could collapse. So it's not just about the finished stairway.
Every stage of construction.
Needs to be safe.
Yep. Address those hazards from day one.
Okay. And of course, we can't forget about everyday hazards.
Things like protruding nails or debris.
Anything that could trip someone up.
Yeah, I gotta keep those stairways clear.
And slippery surfaces.
Those are a big no-no.
Spills, rain, even dust.
Can turn stairs into a slip and slide?
1926.1052A is clear about that.
Address it before anyone uses the stairs.
Okay, so those are the general requirements.
But what about temporary stairways?
Yeah, you see those popping up all the time during a project.
Those have some unique challenges.
Definitely a whole other beast.
1926.1052B dives into that.
All right, let's hear it.
So picture this.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You're pouring concrete stairs.
All right, freshly poured concrete.
And someone tries to walk on them.
Oh, no.
Before they're set.
That's asking for trouble.
Big trouble.
So what does OSHA say?
They require temporary covering.
Like a temporary bridge.
Over that hazard.
Made of wood or another solid material.
So you have a safe walking surface.
Until the concrete's ready.
Makes sense.
So whether it's concrete
How
carrying...
about those skeleton metal stairs?
Waiting for their treads and landings.
You gotta have temporary solutions in place.
Secured and safe.
From day one.
All right, so that's temporary stairways covered.
We're making progress.
But there's one more big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, the part that always trips me up.
Handrails and stair rails.
1926.1052C gets into all that.
That's where things get really detailed.
We'll dive into that next time.
Stay tuned, folks.
We're just getting started.
This deep dive on stairway safety.
It's gonna be a good one.
Okay, so we left off talking about handrails and stair rails.
Yeah, those are super important.
And 1926.1052C.
That's where OSHA really lays out the details.
So let's get into it.
All right, the first big thing to know.
Yeah, hit me with it.
Any stairway with 4 or more risers,
Or any stairway that rises more than 30 inches.
it has to have handrails.
On any unprotected side?
And stair rail systems, too.
So we're talking about both handrails and those full stair rail systems.
Yes, they go together.
And this rule applies even if the stairway is temporary.
No cutting corners just because it's not permanent.
Right, safety first no matter what.
Exactly.
I'm curious about those winding or spiral staircases.
Yeah, those can be tricky.
Do they have their own special rules?
They sure do.
What's different about them?
Well, think about the shape of those steps.
They're kind of wedge-shaped, right?
Yeah, wider on one side, narrower on the other.
And that narrow side.
That's where people are more likely to lose their footing.
So how do handrails help with that?
Well, the handrail actually needs to be offset a bit.
Offset.
Yeah, it's not right in the middle.
So it's positioned more towards the wider part of the step.
Exactly.
I get it.
It guides people away from that narrow edge.
Makes them less likely to trip.
Exactly.
So the handrail is like a little safety nudge?
Yeah, keeping people on the right path.
Okay, so we talked about the why of handrails.
Now let's get into the how.
Yeah, the nitty-gritty details.
How high do they need to be?
What are they made of?
All that good stuff.
Lay it on me.
All right, so first off,
Okay.
stair rails that were installed after March 15th, 1991.
1991, why that specific date?
Well, it probably has to do with how safety standards have evolved.
Like maybe there was some big change back then.
Yeah, newer standards often increase heights for better protection.
Makes sense.
So those stair rails installed after March 15th, 1991,
Okay.
they need to be at least 36 inches high.
36 inches. That's pretty high.
It is.
Measured from the top of the rail system down to the tread.
Yeah, you always measure from the top.
All right, so what about stair rails installed before 1991?
Those can be a bit lower,
How much lower?
between 30 and 34 inches.
So there's a little bit of wiggle room there
But the general trend is towards higher rails.
for better safety.
Exactly. Higher rails give you more leverage.
If you needed to catch yourself?
Yeah, you have more to grab onto.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now let's talk about the space between the handrail and the steps.
You mean like that open area?
Yeah, you can't just leave it wide open.
Oh, no, why not?
Safety hazard.
Someone could fall through.
Or a child could try to climb through.
So OSHA has rules about that too.
They call for intermediate safety features.
Intermediate safety features. What does that even
It
mean?
means you gotta have something there.
To prevent falls through that gap.
Something to create a barrier.
Like what?
Well, you could use mid-rails.
So like a rail that runs in the middle.
Yep, halfway between the top rail and the steps.
Okay. Or you could use screens.
Or mesh.
So like a solid barrier,
Yep, it has to cover the entire opening.
top to bottom.
And it has to run the whole length between supports.
So no gaps.
Right. A complete barrier.
Okay, what else?
You could also use vertical members.
Like balusters.
Exactly.
But there are probably rules about how close together those balusters can be.
You bet.
Spill it.
They can't be more than 19 inches apart.
19 inches so you can't stick your head through.
Or your arm.
Or your leg.
Yeah, you get the idea.
So no matter what you use,
Mid-rail screens, mesh, vertical members.
it's all about limiting the size of those openings.
For maximum safety.
I like it.
But remember all these safety features?
They're only as good as their construction.
Truth.
If the handrails are flimsy.
They're not going to do much good.
So how strong do they need to be?
OSHA has specific requirements for that too.
Let's hear it.
Both handrails and top rails.
Okay.
They have to withstand at least 200 pounds of force.
200 pounds.
Wow, that's like a full-grown adult leaning on it.
Or trying to catch themselves during a fall.
You don't want those things giving way.
Definitely not.
And the force has to be applied within 2 inches of the top edge.
Okay, so it's testing the strength of the whole rail.
And it can be pushed down or outwards?
So they're testing it from all angles.
Yeah, making sure it can handle any kind of force.
200 pounds. That's pretty impressive.
It shows you how seriously OSHA takes this stuff.
It's not just about looks.
It's about saving lives.
Now I'm thinking about the design of the handrail itself.
Yeah, its shape and surface.
Does OSHA have rules about that?
Oh yeah, they get into the details.
Give me the details.
First off, the handrail itself can't be more than 37 inches high.
Okay, so there's a maximum height
And it can't be less than 30 inches high.
measured from the top surface to the tread.
Right, so it has to be within that range.
30 to 37 inches.
That keeps it in a comfortable grabbing range.
For most people.
Too high or too low.
And it loses its effectiveness.
Exactly.
Now I'm thinking about those sharp edges.
Or anything that could snag clothes.
We don't want anyone getting tangled up.
while they're trying to stay safe.
What does OSHA say about that?
They're very clear about it.
Tell me.
Handrails and top rails have to be smooth.
Okay, no sharp edges?
And they have to be free of anything.
That could cause punctures.
Cuts or snag clothing.
So it's all about those little details.
Minimizing even the smallest risks of injury.
Everything matters.
Now here's one that's often overlooked.
Okay. I'm listening.
Clearance.
Clearance. What do you mean?
I'm talking about handrails
Okay.
that aren't a permanent part of the structure.
So like temporary handrails.
Yeah, those need at least 3 inches of clearance.
3 inches of clearance from what?
From walls or other rail.
Or any objects.
Exactly.
So you don't want someone bumping their elbow on a wall.
While they're gripping the handrail.
Or their bag getting caught on something.
Yeah, it's all about creating that clear path.
Free from obstacles.
Exactly, you got it.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground here.
We sure have.
From handrail height and strength.
To those intermediate safety features.
And even clearance.
It's pretty amazing how detailed these regulations are.
I know it's mind-blowing.
But it shows how important stairway safety is.
And how much thought goes into preventing falls and injuries.
But hold on, we're not quite done yet.
What else is there?
There's one last important point to cover.
Okay, bring it on.
We got to talk about those unprotected sides and edges.
Unprotected sides and edges of what?
Landings.
Landings. Okay, let's hear it. Okay, so unprotected sides and edges on landings.
Yeah, you come up the stairs.
Right, you reach the landing.
You don't want to just step off the edge.
Into thin air, no thanks.
That's where 1926.1052C12 comes in.
What does that one say?
It says any unprotected sides or edges.
Of those landings.
You got to have guardrail systems.
Guardrails on landings.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's not just about the stairs themselves.
It's about the whole stairway system.
The whole thing has to be safe.
Including those flat areas.
Where people transition.
Exactly.
You don't want any surprises.
No sudden drop-off.
So guardrails are a must.
And this ties into a bigger picture, too.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Fall protection in general.
Makes sense.
OSHA covers that extensively in Subpart M.
Subpart M.
Yeah, if you're a safety nerd like me.
I'm adding that to my reading list.
It's a gold mine of information.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive.
Into OSHA, 1926.1052.
What's the big takeaway?
For our listeners out there.
The folks who are keeping those construction stairways safe.
I think the key is this. This regulation is all about the details.
Details?
Those seemingly minor specs.
It's about measurements, materials construction.
They all matter.
They all have a reason.
It's about thinking ahead.
Spotting those potential hazards.
And designing for safety.
From day one.
Absolutely.
It's easy to get lost in the jargon sometimes.
Yeah, all those numbers and letters.
But at the end of the day.
These rules are about protecting people.
Exactly.
Behind every regulation.
There's
someone who might have gotten hurt.
Or worse.
If that safety measure wasn't there.
Powerful stuff.
So for all our safety pros out there.
Yeah, you guys are the real heroes.
I challenge you.
Challenge accepted.
Go beyond just checking boxes.
Don't just go through the motions.
Use these regulations as a guide.
A guide to create a culture of safety.
Where everyone on site
is looking out for each other.
Spotting those hazards.
Before they become accidents. That's what it's all about.
It's not just about rule.
It's about awareness.
It's about that mindset.
Where safety comes first.
Always.
Speaking of awareness.
I like where you're going with this.
I have a final thought for everyone.
Let's hear it.
Imagine you're on a job site.
Okay, I'm there.
And you see a stairway.
All right, I see it.
Technically.
It meets all the OSHA requirements.
But something feels off. Maybe the lighting is bad.
Or the handrail feels a little loose.
Or there's debris everywhere.
What do?
Do you just shrug and use the stairs?
Or do you pause?
Take a closer look.
Maybe even report it.
That's the question.
Those judgment calls.
They can make all the difference.
It's about going beyond the checklist.
And really owning that responsibility for safety.
For everyone on site.
That's a great note to end on.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So that's a wrap for us.
Thanks for joining us.
On this deep dive into stairway safety.
Stay safe out there, everybody.